Good afternoon. Thank you for joining us for today's SCNM webinar. We're very excited to bring you this interactive experience where we'll answer all of your questions about SCNM, admission requirements, and using NDCAS, our online application service. My name is Eve Adams, and I will be your host for today's webinar. Before we begin, let's take just a minute to familiarize you with the technology that we'll use for today's webinar. Hopefully you can see my screen. Hopefully you can see my screen now. And that is, of course, how you'll use to participate in today's webinar. You should also have a control box on your screen. And that should be, if you expand it, that's how you'll be able to type in questions about the content in today's webinar. And we'll answer all questions at the end of the webinar. So we anticipate today's webinar to run approximately 60 minutes, about 40 minutes of presentation, followed by about 20 minutes of question and answer, of course, depending on how many questions you have. So during today's webinar, again, you'll be hearing from me and from Tanya, one of our third-year students. So she'll be able to answer all of your questions from a student perspective and talk with you about SCNM's curriculum. Today we'll, of course, talk a little bit about naturopathic medicine, give you some more information about SCNM, our admission requirements, and then share some tips and techniques with you about NDCAS, which is our online application service. So to begin, and hopefully since you're at this point in the process, you're already pretty familiar with naturopathic medicine. Just to reiterate, naturopathic doctors concentrate on whole patient wellness, attempting to find the underlying cause of a patient's condition rather than focusing on symptomatic treatment. And naturopathic doctors use natural therapies rather than synthetic drugs to treat their patients. So these are just some of the natural therapies that NDs can use and ones that we teach here in our curriculum at SCNM. So of course a huge focus on nutrition, botanical medicine, acupuncture, and yes, I do want to point out acupuncture because that is a part of our curriculum here at SCNM. So all of our students do learn acupuncture. Physical medicine, environmental medicine, the list goes on and on. And I do want to point out pharmacotherapy because that is also taught in our curriculum because it's important for our students as future doctors to have a really good understanding of the pharmaceuticals that their patients will likely be on when they come to see them. And it's only with that understanding that they can slowly wean, as appropriate, wean their patients off of those drugs as they're working with them on their symptoms. All right, so a little bit more about SCNM. So we are a single-purpose, first profession naturopathic medical school. We are, of course, accredited by the Higher Learning Commission and the Council on Naturopathic Medicine. And students graduate with a doctorate in naturopathic medicine. We're located in Tempe, which is a suburb right outside and actually next to Phoenix. And of course, with that comes a lot of benefits like a low cost of living and just the benefits of being in an outdoor environment where there's hiking, almost year-round hiking, biking, and lots of great nearby excursions since we're so close to Flagstaff and Sedona, and so many other great places. At SCNM, our medical clinic and medicinary are on site, which makes it a real advantage for students and just makes it a lot more convenient for them once they begin their clinical program. So we're super excited to have had our campus expanded recently. We added the Community Commons, which is a 48,000 square foot building that is now on our campus that has a teaching kitchen, Nourish, a healthy cafe, a pain relief center, a larger medicinary, wonderful classrooms and study space, a larger library, yoga and exercise rooms that really make it convenient. So I just saw a note that maybe you're having trouble viewing my presentation. Let's see. Is that better? Thank you for that note.
Yes, better.
Okay, perfect. So this is just an image of what our community commons looks like, and some pictures from the interior. Again, just a really great benefit to the student experience here at SCNM, giving students much needed study space and other amenities that were just lacking a little bit before we were able to open this wonderful space. So to talk a little bit about our calendar. So our academic calendar consists of 4 11-week quarters. And SCNM has 2 starts, a spring class, which begins in April, and a fall class, which begins in October. And of course, you're likely on this webinar because you realize that you know that we're accepting applications for both that spring and that fall class. So of course, our goal at SCNM is to train you effectively to be a competent and confident doctor. And we're able to do that with a state-of-the-art curriculum that has really been refined to be able to deliver on that promise to students. So we believe in the importance of starting the clinical experience very, very early on in the program and giving you as much of that experience as possible. So with that, I'll actually turn it over to Tanya to tell you a little bit about that.
Hi, I'm Tanya. So with the clinical experience, that was actually one of the main things that attracted me to SCNM, was that at the end of the day, I want to be the best clinician that I possibly can be, and starting our clinical training the first week of my first year of medical school really attracted me to SCNM. So in your first year, you're going to start by learning all your patient intakes, how to do a patient intake, what questions you need to ask, and then you'll also start learning vitals and how to do the various physical exams. And you will also learn how to do blood draws your first year and do injections. And supplement that, you'll be doing field observations with doctors to get more experience with the different modalities and to help develop your professional self. You'll also have a medicinary post where you'll spend, I think, 12 hours it is working in the medicinary, broken up over several weeks, learning about the different supplements that we have and how to make tinctures and write proper labels and read a script. And you'll also have a lab post where you'll learn about, you'll practice doing your blood draws and learn about how the lab prepares blood work to be sent out in order to be analyzed. And then in your second year, you will continue with your clinical experience by learning more physical exams and further developing your clinical skills in class and in lecture and lab. You will have standardized patients between your first and second year, in which you'll actually get to practice a kind of like a little mock exam where you have a patient come in and you practice all your skills that you've learned over the year. And they do a really good job preparing you for that, and it's a great milestone that you go through with your classmates and seeing how much you've learned and how much you're developing as a student clinician. In your third year, you'll enter clinic, and this is where you'll be in the role as a secondary. So our medical center is a teaching center, and the students in their third and fourth years visit with the patients, do their intake, do their physical exams, come up with the treatment plan, consult with the doctors about the treatment plan that they want to do, and then they execute the treatment plan, whether it's doing acupuncture, hydrotherapy on the patient, or homeopathy, whatever you have decided with the attending doctor that you want to do. So in your third year, you're more of a secondary role, so you're more observing, but you do get a chance to ask questions and participate in the treatment making. And then in the fourth year, that's where you're the primary point of contact for the patient. So you'll be doing their full intake, being the primary point of contact with the doctor, and you are basically in charge of the patients that are assigned to you that come into the clinic. I think that's about it for it. And then we'll talk a little bit about the curriculum here. So over your 4 years at SCNM, or 5 years if you're doing the 5-year track, you build on the knowledge that from your first year onto your second year into your third year. And so it starts really basic, both for the clinic and for the curriculum. So the first year curriculum is all your basic sciences. So basically you learn how the body works. You learn all your anatomy, your physiology, your biochemistry. And then you also have your clinical practice lab, and you also learn about the history and philosophy of naturopathic medicine to support you through your first year's journey. When second year comes along, you take your general medical diagnosis, and this is basically how the body breaks. So you know how the body works, and now you're going to learn everything that goes wrong in the body and continue with your clinical practice skills. And then you're going to start learning more specific modalities. So in your first year in the history and philosophy of naturopathic medicine, you just get a very overview of all the different modalities that we as naturopathic physicians offer. But in the second year, you really start to dive into those and experience them more hands-on. And then there's also electives that you can take throughout the program, either your first year, your second year, your third year, or your fourth year. In your third year, that's when you enter clinic, so that's when your clerkships will begin. And in third year, you learn how to treat the body and how to heal the body. And you'll continue with your modalities and learning, diving more into those, learning more in depth, building on the previous knowledge, and continue doing electives for your classes and for your clinic. And then the fourth year, you specialize, you have your specialized areas of medicine, such as geriatrics or pediatrics, emergency medicine, and you again continue to build on all our modalities and develop your clinical skills.
And one of the things that we, thank you so much, Tanya, and one of the things that we added to the curriculum to just help cement that learning process is a Hubie capstone at the end of year one. So students learn so much of that basic science information in quarter 1, 2, and 3 that we realized it was helpful to have something at the end of that where that information, where students had an opportunity to really synthesize that information and take some time to sort of sit back and make sure that they were able to put all those pieces together. That, of course, is so important because it really helps students in preparation for NCLEX 1, which is the board that students take after their second year about all the basic sciences. So again, the thought was, you know, before they go on to year 2, let's help them synthesize the information in year 1 to better prepare them for that exam at the end of the second year. And we also added some concentrated study time for students to really allow them to just not be in class, with the exception of selectives, to really help them, to give them the time that they need to study for that very important exam. And I know that Tanya just benefited from that review process, so I'll have her share a little bit of her experience with that to you.
So going into boards, I took my step 1 NCLEX board exam at the beginning of August, and we had 5 weeks off, including our break, to prepare for boards. During this time, there were classes offered through the NCLEX 1 and NCLEX 2 capstone review courses, which were really, really beneficial for studying for boards. So they just did rapid-fire review of a lot of very high-yield, important concepts in anatomy, physiology, biochemistry, and then gave us practice exams for NCLEX. So the first day that we had this course, we had a mock exam just to see where we were at and how we were doing, and it broke it down into each section you're going to see on your board exam. And by breaking it down to each section, you were able to see where your strengths were and where your weaknesses were, and that helped me figure out where I needed to focus my time with studying. And then over the 3-week period, they had different classes that focused on those areas that helped with rapid fire review. And then at the end, we had another exam just to see where we were at again and how we have improved. And that was a week before our actual board exam. So if there was an area that I found that I was weak in or struggling in, I still had some time to go over and refresh on that stuff. And it was really beneficial for me, and a lot of my classmates, we really liked it. And we were the first class to actually have this, and a lot of us felt we were very prepared for boards and did really well. So.
Awesome. Thanks so much, Tanya. And really that NCLEX review time was built into the curriculum really at the suggestion and feedback of students. And I think that's one of the really great things about our community here at SCNM is that we're small enough to be nimble enough to make changes as we recognize that there's opportunity for things to be done better or differently. So one of our former chief academic officer used to say that curriculum revision is never done because there are always things that you can do to enhance the experience. And this is just one example of that, and again, of being responsive to student requests. And it's so great to hear the great feedback from Tanya's class and that it really helped them, gave them the time to better prepare for boards. So thanks for that, Tanya. So she also mentioned that we have a 5-year program, and we are in the second iteration of that. And again, in our nimbleness, we recognize that we needed to have a pathway for those students that maybe had families or weren't science majors in their undergrad, and just maybe needed a little bit more time to go through the program. So through our 5-year program, we take the first year of the basic sciences and the preclinical experience and distribute it over 2 years. So that really allows students to take the time that they need to focus on those basic science classes, which can be quite rigorous. So the rest of the 3 years are unchanged. And again, this option really offers flexibility and support for students. So this just gives you a visual of what year 1 and 2 look like in the 5-year plan versus the 4-year plan. So we've also employed some great teaching techniques like team-based learning. And again, I'll turn it back over to Tanya to tell you a little bit about that.
So team-based learning, I really enjoyed it throughout my time at SCNM, and we still use it even in our 3rd year. In our first year, you will be assigned a TBL group, and once a week you'll have TBL, which you will have a list of objectives to study. You can study it individually as a group. My group would always, we'd study our objectives separately, and then we would meet before our TBL class and go over the objectives together just to make sure we were all on the same page. And then with TBL, you take an individual readiness assessment test called an IRAT, and that's just to kind of see where you're at with the material and how much you understand. And then you take the same test again as a group. And the idea of this is that you're supposed to be learning from your peers, and if there was a question that I wasn't sure on, like my classmate would be there to, offer guidance and offer support. And we could come to an answer together using all of our knowledge on what we've learned. And scores were always so much better on the group application exercise. You would be amazed. There would be a question that every single one of us would have gotten wrong on our individual tests, but when we went together as a group, we completely all changed our answer to the correct one just because we were able to sit there and discuss. And I think that's really important for our education because when we are doctors, we will be collaborating with other doctors in the field, and we need to have those skills in listening and communicating and compromising, and this really allows for that. We also have an exercise called group application exercises, and then we take the concepts that we've been learning in class and we apply them to patient cases. And so from your first year, you'll be actually reading patient cases and coming up with and answering questions as a group based on what you're learning in class, but it's actually a real clinical case. So they start integrating that clinical aspect into your curriculum early, so you get that exposure, but you got to do it in a team setting where it takes some of the pressure off, but you can learn from each other. with our curriculum, we have a systems-based approach. And so what that means is that we start with one system, for example, the heart, and we're going to learn everything about the heart at once. So you're going to learn the anatomy, the physiology, the histology, and then in your clinical practice class, you'll actually be learning the cardio physical exam. And so this is really great because it allows you to really see how all the anatomy is connected to the physiology and how that physiology comes through in the clinical, in the physical exam that you are doing, and what the significance of listening for the lub and the dub do when you're listening with your stethoscope on the heart. And so I found that this was a really great approach to learning because I'd be studying for one class and then I would find so much overlap into another class, and that it actually cut down my study time quite a bit and added a lot to like looking at the whole picture. So then
what is the other?
Oh,
go for it, T. You go.
All right. So then we have, so like I said, the reason why I came to SCNM was because of the extensive amount of clinical experience that we get, and I want to be a clinician at the end of the day, and the school definitely provides so many opportunities for us to develop those skills. So your first year, you'll have your clinical practice class, also known as Clipper, and that's through your first 2 years, and then you have time to do 44 hours of field observation that you will be assigned to with a doctor after your first year. With that, then you also have the lab and medicinary post, which I briefly touched on, and then you have the opportunity to practice on each other. So every lab, you have a lecture and a lab portion for your clinical practice class, and during that time you'll practice on each other. You practice doing physical exams on standardized patients and doing medical intakes on standardized patients. And then when you get to clinic in your third year, then you actually get to practice on real patients as a primary or a secondary. But you still have the support of doctors along the way offering you support and guidelines. And they're always giving so much feedback on what you can do to improve and make yourself a better clinician.
Awesome. Thank you for that. Tanya just went over a lot of the our innovative teaching methods that we're really proud of, and that's just one of let me back up and say that SCNM really prides itself on being an innovative community. So we're often the first in our field to do a lot of different things, and the curriculum and a lot of the revisions that we mentioned is just one example of that. In addition, we have also started a great program called Natural Advantage, which is in essence a medical school boot camp that we allow students who are coming into the program to participate in the week prior to orientation, to just kind of give them a refresher on maybe what it's like to be in school if they've been out of school for a long time, and to give them some helpful tools and techniques and teach them different study techniques that will be helpful to them once they're in the program. And what we hear from students over and over is that it's so helpful to have time where they can focus on figuring some of that stuff out, like those study techniques, without there necessarily being implications of grades. And it's also wonderful because it helps them to form relationships with faculty, staff, and of course other classmates before they actually start the program. So we just finished our 6th iteration of Natural Advantage, our 5th iteration of Natural Advantage, and it's something that will continue to provide to students because it's proven to really be invaluable in the educational experience. We also have 2 positions that have really contributed to the quality of instruction at SCNM, including a Dean of Instruction, whose job is really to just evaluate the instruction that students are receiving in the classroom, as well as a Director of Academic Assessment, who is always assessing, for lack of a better term, all the things that are happening in the classroom to make sure that things are being done as effectively as possible. We also have learning specialists on campus to work with students to help them refine study techniques and to help them with different concepts. Again, all in the vein of just giving students all the tools that they need to be great students, so they can in turn be strong practitioners when they graduate from the program. And of course, our building is very exciting too. We are the first naturopathic college to build a new building, and it's on its way to being Platinum LEED certified, and that's certainly something that we're very proud of. So as part of that extensive clinical education, we also give students the opportunity to practice their clinical skills at extended sites throughout the greater Phoenix area, where they can work with patients in different pathologies that they might not see in our on-campus medical clinic. So whether it's working with individuals dealing with substance abuse or women and children that are in domestic violence situations, or the HIV/AIDS treatment centers, lots of different opportunities for them to provide their skills to these different populations, but again, also in turn learn from those situations and see patients that they might not see in our clinic downstairs. So I do just want to point out some resources to you. So we talked about the 4- and the 5-year curriculum. So if that's something that you wanted to, of course, study in greater detail, I've provided the link of where you can find that on our website. So you would go under, of course, Home, Academics, Doctor of Naturopathic Medicine, and then Program of Study. And I'm not sure why my screen keeps stopping, so my apologies there. Oops. There we go. Sorry about that. All right. So to talk a little bit about student life, I'll actually turn it back over to Tanya to do this, because as a student, she's probably the best person to tell you a little bit about what it's like to be a student at SCNM, sort of outside of the academic sphere. Tanya?
All right. So you will have a life as a student. I do promise you that. I mean, it is medical school, so there is always something going on, and there is always something to study, but there's a lot to do in Arizona and around the school. A lot of people live really close to the school, which is really great. That cuts down a lot on transportation time, allows them to go home for lunch. If you have break between classes, you're able to go home, take a nap, prepare your lunch, study, etc. So you can do that at home, or our new building, which is great for people who live a little bit further away. We have a ton of student clubs on campus. Some of our more popular ones are Naturopaths Without Borders, or the Sports Medicine Club if you're interested in sports medicine or working with athletes. Also Natural Speakers, which is like Toastmasters, where you can develop your speaking and public speaking skills. We're really close to Arizona State University, so that allows us, there's access to football games, there's always something going on around that area. There's hiking, there's Tempe Town Lake where you can go sit by it, you can go boating, rent paddle boards, paddle boats, all of that. And what's really nice about the area is that it's relatively cheap to do things compared to some of a lot of other cities. And there's always festivals going on weekends. There's always something to do in the city, floating down the Salt River, going to baseball games, basketball games. There's lots going on. And so I always get the question, like, do you actually have time to do things outside of school? And I will tell you that it can be challenging because it is medical school, but it is very important that you schedule time for yourself. And I definitely take advantage of our breaks and of making sure that I do something for myself, whether it's go to the gym, do yoga, go for a hike, or just go and like relax with friends somewhere in a park.
Awesome. Thank you so much. Okay, so we're going to shift gears a little bit and talk about the admissions process and some of our admission requirements. So we do, of course, require a 4-year bachelor's degree. And in addition, we require all the prerequisite coursework that you see up on the screen in front of you. So students must meet the prerequisite coursework at a GPA of a 3.0 or above. And in addition, our overall GPA requirement is also currently at a 3.0. Now, having said that, we will, you know, if you're sort of on the cusp of that, we still encourage you to reach out to an admissions representative, because there are other factors that we look at, especially if you have an advanced degree or you know, you kind of maybe didn't do so well in your first year of college and then started to make up for that in your junior or senior year, or had you know, strong science classes. So again, definitely reach out to us, but keep that in mind as you're going through the admissions process. We do encourage students to send in copies of their unofficial transcripts for a free evaluation, so we can take a look and see if you meet that GPA requirement and see if you've met the prerequisite coursework requirements. And if not, we'll let you know what you're missing, and that will help guide you as you finish your education in preparation for the program. So the application process is outlined on the screen. So we do accept all of our applications through NDCAS, the centralized application service for 4 of the naturopathic schools. So of course, in addition to SCNM, Bridgeport in Connecticut, Canadian College in Toronto, and Boucher in Vancouver also participate in the centralized application, which means that you can fill out one application to apply to all 4 of those schools, which certainly makes it a lot easier on applicants as they're, you know, as they're kind of figuring out where they want to apply to. So when you submit your application through NDCAS, there is an application fee of $115 for one school. So if you decide that you want to apply to multiple schools, there would be an additional fee on top of that. And it's an additional $40 per school as opposed to double the cost. So again, the CAS system also makes it a little bit more cost effective to apply to multiple schools as opposed to paying a full application fee to each school. So once you submit your application through NDCAS, and once we receive it, one of our admissions reps would take a look at it, make sure that you meet our requirements, and if you do, they would reach out to schedule your in-person interview. So we do require all students to interview in person, and those, again, are, as it implies, here in Arizona, and we do those on Fridays. And then in addition, we have a great list of optional activities that you can participate in on Thursday to give you even more exposure to the SCNM community. So what I'm going to do now is just talk with you about NDCAS and hopefully share some tips and techniques with you. I will say that NDCAS went to a new platform for this intake, so we're still learning some of the tricks to the system, but I believe that this will help make your application process a little bit easier. So if you started NDCAS prior to August but didn't submit your application, you will need to create a new account. And you can see that this is the, of course, the welcome page to the website, and there, the website is ndcas.org, so that will let you set up an account. So when you set up an account, you will, and when you start to apply, you'll have to, actually you can do this at the end of the process, but you will need to pick which program for SCNM and the other schools that you want to apply to. So of course I'm only going to speak to information about SCNM, but you'll see that there is an option for a spring or a fall intake. So you only pick one. If you pick more than one, you'd have to pay the fee twice, and so we don't want you to do that. So if you're applying for spring, hit spring. If you're applying for fall, hit fall. If you have any questions about which one to select, talk to your admissions rep. But again, you only need to pick one designation for SCNM. So I want to point out this application home button, this 4-quadrant square. So that's the button that you want to, that's basically your home button. So if ever you're on a page and you want to go back to the home page, this is the button that you would pick. For some people it's intuitive, for some it's not, so we definitely just wanted to point that out to you. This page, though, does give you a nice overview of all the information that you'll need to submit for the application. So of course you'll need to submit personal information, so all of your biographical information, your academic history, so all the places that you've ever attended school, supporting information, and we'll talk about what that is. And then the program materials are the pieces that are specific to each of the schools, and we'll talk about that as well. So of course your personal information, most of it you entered when you were creating your account, but you can always go here to edit or add additional information. So academic history. So one of the things about a centralized application is that you do have to enter in every class you ever took at every institution you ever attended. And I know this may sound daunting to students, and it's true, it can take a little bit of time, but as long as you sit down and you're ready for it, and once you kind of get the hang of it, it goes by pretty quickly. So of course what we would recommend is that you have copies of your unofficial transcripts ready to go, so you have all the information that you need to submit that information. The other part of this is that you, through NDCAS, have to have copies of all of the schools you've ever attended, copies of those transcripts sent to NDCAS. So there's a form under the colleges attended where you see it says download transcript request form. So you fill that form out, and then that's what you give to your institution, so they know to send your institution, your transcripts from your institution directly to NDCAS. So it will populate your NDCAS information and make that process easier. So again, all of your transcripts do need to be sent directly to NDCAS. So as I mentioned, as you start to fill out the information about all the classes that you took at any institution, it will be super helpful to have copies of all your transcripts printed out so you have that in front of you. And you'll see that you'll select the term that you attended the class, the year, and then that will help you take you through the system. Okay? So again, just reiterating that you do need to enter all of your coursework into NDCAS. One of the new services, though, that NDCAS is providing is that they will enter the classes in for you. Of course, they'll do that for a fee, and it ranges anywhere from $50 to $150. And you know, for a lot of students, they would rather just do it themselves. But for those students that are, you know, that just don't have the time to do it and have the resources to pay for it, it might be a nice optional benefit to take advantage of. So as I mentioned, through that transcript request form, this is what you're going to give to the registrar's office at your undergrad institutions or any community college that you've ever attended, and it will populate your NDCAS number, and that your registrar will then have this form and know exactly where to send those transcripts so they get uploaded to your file. Okay? So there is a section for standardized tests, and we don't require standardized tests for our application. If you've taken the MCAT, the GMAT, or the GRE and you have scores, you can certainly enter that information, but it's not required. For any of our students that are English as a second language students, we do require a TOEFL, and so we would require that score. But besides that, that's something that you can leave, and you can just type or select the I am not adding any standardized tests button. So supporting information. So of course, you know, we want to know about all of the clubs and activities and volunteer work that you were involved with. and you can provide that information in one of two ways. So one, you can put all of that on your CV or resume, and that is one of the things that we require of all of our applicants, and you would upload that directly to the website, or you can enter it in the experiences and achievements section here. So as long as we're getting it either on your resume or through the app, either one works for us. We also do require 3 evaluations or letters of recommendation, and I'll talk about how you go about getting those. So you, once you identify who your recommenders will be, you type their information into the evaluation section, and this will then send an email to them and ask those individuals to write a letter on your behalf. Of course, we would recommend that you let your recommender know in advance that they're going to be receiving this email, and make sure that you give them a deadline to complete the information, because I think we can all appreciate that everybody is super busy, and it's probably the time of year where a lot of students are asking a lot of professors to write letters of recommendation. So you don't want them not submitting a letter to slow down your application. So definitely just be mindful of that as you're going through this process. And also keep in mind that if you have at least 1 or 2 of your recommendations in, you know, we'll take a look at that and see if it makes sense for you to interview. So we won't necessarily hold up your interview process if you meet all of the other recommendations if we don't have all 3 letters in. So just kind of keep that in mind. Don't let that stop you from, you know, completing the application. So, of course, in addition to submitting your coursework and your achievements, we do ask students to write an essay about why this is your chosen field. So we want to know why you want to become a naturopathic doctor, how you see the role of naturopathic medicine in the healthcare system, how you see the profession evolving, and then we'd love for you to share any life experiences that you have that you feel prepare you for the rigors of the program. So it's a little tricky to find where this section is, but once you are in the program selection, and I'll toggle over to NDCAS in a second and show you. Once you're on the SCNM page, you go under questions and you submit the information there. So you can see the question is there, and then you have the box where you can type in your essay. And of course, what I think most students do is type it in a Word document, you know, make sure you've spell checked everything, and then copy and paste it over into that box. Okay. So again, this just kind of shows you the program materials section for SCNM, and I'll toggle over and show you that in the system. And then once you have completed all of the information, once you're ready to submit, this 0 will change to a 1 if you're only applying to 1 school, to 2 if you're applying to 2 schools, and then so once you're ready to submit, you would then make your application payment, and then your information would be submitted. So definitely note that if you are paying by money order or check, your application won't be available to us or any other schools until NDCAS submits that information. So, you know, moral is that credit card is sort of the quickest way to facilitate the process. And if you do need to pay by check or money order, it might slow it down just a little bit. So just a couple tips to help you through the process. And this one I think will be most helpful to students. So if you find yourself not being able to progress to the next page, make sure that all the fields on the page have been completed. So one thing with NDCAS that I find is that all the fields are required, even though they're not marked required. And so if you can't progress to the next page, it means you probably haven't filled something out. Even if you think it doesn't apply to you, there's probably like an NA button for you to select. So definitely go back and take a look at things if you progress to the next page. So as with most online web-based applications, you can log into the session multiple times to complete your application. So you definitely don't have to do it all in one sitting. As I've already mentioned, definitely make sure that you have all of your transcripts printed out before you start, because that will certainly make things a lot easier. So you are responsible for requesting copies of your transcripts to be sent to NDCAS. If you are accepted to SCNM, we will ask you for another official transcript from the institution where you received your undergraduate degree. So sometimes that seems a little duplicative to students, but we are required to have an original transcript on file for all students that matriculate. So again, you will be asked to order another transcript for your undergrad institution if you're accepted. Okay. So as I mentioned, you'll have to upload that resume or your CV during the application process. So if you didn't list things on your resume, make sure they're in the application. And if you listed them on the application, you don't necessarily have to add them to your resume. And then keep in mind that your essay needs to be needs to answer all 4 of those questions within the 5,000 character limit. And then think about who you want your recommenders to be prior to submitting their name to NDCAS, and make sure you reach out to them and just give them a heads up, because if they would all certainly appreciate that than just kind of getting a standardized email from NDCAS saying that they've been asked to evaluate you. I do want to point out that on the NDCAS homepage, there are frequently asked questions and instructions, as well as an email if you need help. So you can certainly reach out to us and your admissions rep, and we'll do our best to answer questions. But if you are having problems with the application, definitely feel free to reach out to NDCAS since they'll be able to help. So I'm going to just kind of toggle to NDCAS and show you what I meant about the program materials. So actually, let me go to Manage My Programs. So here's the programs list. And you can see that here I selected, so here you can see the 4 schools that are part of NDCAS, so Boucher, Canadian, of course us here, and then Bridgeport. And if you wanted to apply to, so here this green box means that I apply to the spring program. So you can easily select both, but again, you don't want to select both. If you're just applying to SCNM, you either want to pick fall or spring. Okay, and let me show you where that essay is. Go back to the home page, program materials, Doctor of Naturopathic Medicine, and then here's the question part. So you can see that this is where you would submit your essay. And once there were some words in there, it would allow you to save your response. Okay? All right, let me go back to our PowerPoint. So again, as you're going through the application process, you have lots of different resources. Of course, NDCAS is one. Your admissions rep is another one. So for those students with last names A through M, you'll be working with Jody. For those students in the later half of the alphabet, you'll be working with Charlotte. But here we work as a team, so any one of us could help you with your questions. And hopefully you will have connected with Jody or Charlotte in advance of starting the application when you send us your unofficial transcript. So hopefully they'll be able to, to start helping you with the application process even before you get to NDCAS. So we do accept applications on a rolling basis, but we do have different deadlines for early consideration. That really just makes students open to additional scholarship opportunities, as well as it helps you to have some information earlier on in life so you can start planning your move out to Arizona. So at this time, definitely want to encourage you to type in any questions that you have about any of the information that we talked about today, or if you have any other questions that Tanya might be able to help from her student perspective, encourage you to type those into the question box on your control panel. So again, just to end with some useful tips, so definitely start early. Again, sometimes submitting transcripts and requesting transcripts takes a little bit of time. You want to give those references lots of advance notice. Make sure that you review the prerequisite coursework with admissions. So again, just reminding you that we have our great service where you're able to send in unofficial copies of your transcripts and we'll evaluate them and let you know if you are missing anything. And again, don't assume. One of the things that we really pride ourselves on is providing great customer service to our students. So if you have questions, definitely call or email us. Don't assume. Just reach out to us to get clarification. Okay. If you've never been to campus, definitely encourage you to come and visit us. So twice a year we have an open house called Discovery Day. And the one this fall is coming up on Saturday, November 14th. So definitely encourage you to make a trip out to hear presentations from different doctors, talk with students about student life, learn more about the admissions process, and just start to get a feel of our community. We also have a Student for a Day program where students can sit in on clinical shifts and on classrooms just to see what life on campus is like. And of course, if you want something a little bit, you want to just come take a tour of campus, we always encourage individuals to do that. All right, well at this point, I'd love to answer your questions. Tanya, there's a question for you. Somebody is wondering if you know what you're going to do when you graduate, or sort of what your, if there's specific modalities that you're really interested in the profession.
Okay, this question, I get this all the time, and honestly, well, I'm originally from Canada, and I hope to go back to Canada when I'm done. You definitely want to do a residency at the school, just so I can learn more from all the fabulous doctors that we have at our school. I'm not quite sure exactly what I want to be doing when I go back to Canada. I know there's a practice that I'm interested in joining, but I'm also interested in doing teaching. There's my undergraduate university there that I would love to teach at. And but as far as modalities, I love homeopathy. I definitely want to do a lot of homeopathy in my practice. Lots of stuff with mental illness and psychiatric conditions. And I love children, so pediatrics would be great as well. But I'm open to working with all patient populations and using whatever modalities that my patients are most comfortable with, even though I have a preference for one over the other.
Okay, great, thank you. And another question for you, what's one of your favorite things about SCNM?
I think one of my favorite things about SCNM is the fact that I feel like I'm getting healthier, even though I'm like in the most stressful part of my life and of my school career. We learn so much, and but with that we have to take care of ourselves. And so while we're learning about physical medicine, we're actually practicing on each other, and like I'm adjusting classmates and they're adjusting me, or when we're learning about hydrotherapy, we're actually practicing hydrotherapy sessions on each other, or doing acupuncture on each other before we actually get to real patients in the clinic. So I think that's my favorite part, is just like the hands-on nature of the program and actually being able to physically experience all the modalities.
That's awesome. Thank you. There's also a question about NDCAS and where the essay is submitted. So let me toggle back and go back to the website. So, all right, so it's here under the program information, but let me go back to the home page to show you where that is. So you want to go under program materials, and then at this point, hopefully you would have already selected your school. So you would have selected SCNM under Manage My Programs, and then all the schools that you selected would show up here. So I'm going to click on SCNM, and then you see the home page, which has this information, and then the question page is here. So hopefully that helps. So again, let me go back to home. So you would have first needed to select your school here. So let me show you that. Once I select Canadian College and go back home under program materials, I now see Canadian, and then you see that their essay question is there, and it's the same essay question for all the schools. So hopefully that helps. Okay, and then it looks like we have another question about the letters of recommendation and who those should be submitted by. So again, we require 3 letters of recommendation. One needs to be academic in nature. So hopefully a professor that you had in school, or if you're finishing up your prereqs, you know, the instructor that, that taught you one of those classes, that would certainly fulfill that requirement. The second letter should come from a healthcare professional. So hopefully as you've been on this journey, you've done some shadowing, whether it was a naturopathic doctor or maybe you worked in another medical environment. And so we would want to hear from one of your supervisors in that experience why you would be a good candidate for the program. And then the last letter could be another one of those, so another academic or another healthcare, or somebody who can speak to your how you are in an occupational sense. So maybe it was a supervisor from one of your jobs, or if you've done some volunteer work, somebody who observed you in that capacity. So that would fulfill the third requirement. Okay. All right. Well, it looks like, Tanya, we have one more question for you. So you talked about it a little bit, but can you talk about how you maintain some balance between life outside of school and how it, you know, what you, just kind of how you came to the point where you are now, where it seems like you have a pretty good balance?
So it is tough to, at first, when you're going to come to the school, you will be very overwhelmed. But it's important to know that everyone goes through that. It's just because it's new school, new program, you're figuring things out, especially if you're new to the area. But as you go along, you definitely get a lot better at managing your time and understanding what was really required for each class. And so I find that I've become a lot more efficient at studying and more efficient at like getting ready for school and getting prepared. So it gives me a little bit more free time now. But I also do make sure I schedule time at least once a week to do something fun for myself. So I might be like, schedule Saturday afternoon for going to the lake, or you know, scheduling Saturday afternoon to maybe go do yoga in the park. I always try, my schedule is crazy. I schedule everything. I schedule when I'm going to the gym. I schedule when I'm going grocery shopping. I schedule just what, sometimes I even schedule when I need to go to bed, just to keep me on track and keep me focused. But I find you'll find a lot of students at SCNM, that's what they do. They have everything scheduled, when they're going to do this, when they're going to do that, when they're going to study, and that helps them focus a little bit better and allows them to bring in all the aspects of your life. And it is really, really, really important that you do take time for yourself. This program is so stressful, and if you don't take time to do something for yourself that you love and that is a way for you to de-stress, you will get burnt out, unfortunately. And but that's the same with anything. If you're doing 100% of anything all the time, it's not going to work out for you always. So I make sure that I'm taking care of myself, number one. That comes first on my list. Second is school, and then third is making sure that I have doing something that keeps me de-stressed and keeps my sanity. And a lot of what I do, though, is I love our student groups on campus, and so that's what a lot of my extra spare time goes to, is with those student groups. But that's what my way of releasing and relaxing.
Awesome. Thank you so much. All right, so we have time for just one final question before we end the webinar. And we have somebody wondering how large the classes are. So the didactic classes in your first and your second year, and Tanya, you can certainly speak to this too, tend to be as large as your, well, like the lecture classes are as large as the incoming class. So the fall class always tends to be bigger, anywhere from 80 to 95 students in the fall, and in the spring it tends to be anywhere from 30 to 45 students. But then you're broken up into smaller sections for the lab classes, and those are typically up to about 20 to maybe 22, 23 students, again, depending on how large the larger class was. Tanya, anything you'd add to that?
That's generally about right. Sometimes when you'll have some classes like your clinical practice class, depending if you're a fall start or a spring start, that they might be cut in half. So if you have about 80 or 90 in your class, for some of your classes they might have about 40 or 50, and you guys will just be 2 sections of it. And then all your labs are always about 20 people or less, which is really great to allow us for that one-on-one time.
Awesome, thank you. We are coming up on the hour, so at this point we will thank you for joining us this afternoon. The webinar will be has been recorded and will be posted to our website in the next few weeks. But of course, if you have any additional questions, please don't hesitate to reach out to us. We'd love to answer any of your questions and guide you along the process. I want to say a huge thank you to Tanya for joining us this week. This is her break week before she jumps into clinic next week. So we appreciate that she's not taking every waking minute to do a whole lot of nothing, but is still also helping us out. So thank you so much for being here. And again, thank you for joining us. Let us know how we can help. But with that, I will conclude the webinar. Have a great afternoon, everybody.